Hey guys, before we dive into the show, I wanted to tell you about the perfect trailer queue blueprint, which is 100% free and you can download it right now over at thetrailermusicschool.com/blueprint. Now, this blueprint will help you to completely understand the structure of trailer music, how to build tracks that will be more licensable and have more impact and capture the right people's attention. So, whenever you start writing a cue, make sure you've got this blueprint to hand and you can use it to help speed up your process, feel more confident that you've crafted a well-structured trailer cue before you send it off to that publisher or editor or supervisor. Okay, let's get into the episode.
One man, one community. In the Trailer Music School's monthly group call. Welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. Today we have another group call with the Trailer Music School community. Enjoy. Hey guys, lovely to see you. So we have another monthly group call on our hands today, which is awesome. So we've got some questions to be running through over the next sort of half an hour or so that have been submitted from you to the community, and then we'll dive into the brief tracks, which is the brief that we sent you guys this month, and I'll give some feedback on some selected tracks. I'm excited about this one. Well, I'm always excited about most of these things, to be fair. I am very excited because this one is hybrid orchestral, which is kind of like the peak of the mountain we are all trying to climb, really, isn't it? You know, when you say I want to get into trailer music, hardly anyone's going to be like, I want to get into trailer music and write solo piano stuff. Yeah. But admittedly I do that and I love doing that, but this is the peak. So this is kind of like Marvel stuff, but we'll dive into that in a bit. In the meantime, Espen, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. So listeners on the podcast, Espen's the community manager at the Trailer Music School. Yeah, and he does an amazing job. So Espen, do we have any questions? I trust we do. Hey, wait, Scott, Are you eating breakfast? Oh, no, lunch. Of course. Who's? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Espen. I'm just looking at the pictures.
Yeah. Let's dive in with Minko first. He's asking, "Do you miss me?" Because he's on vacation. That's his question.
That's the question. Okay, I'll string this out for 5 minutes, Minko, shall I?
We'll do another one.
I miss you dearly. Yeah.
We had a couple ones. So this is a good one, actually. Do you also watch trailers when writing music to see how it fits energy-wise?
Actually, that's a really great question. And in my head, that's two questions. So if we hear the first part, which is like, do I listen to trailer music? Do I watch trailers when I'm working on trailer music? The answer is yes, because usually there is some kind of reference point for me. And that's honestly, aside from sitting in a cinema with a massive bowl of nachos and chilies and cheese and salsa, that's my favorite time to sit and watch trailers, is just before I start an album, because it gets me pumped, it gets me excited. Not in the same way that listening to trailer music does, but when you watch a trailer, you're seeing the trailer music do its job. And hopefully you're not really noticing the music. Hopefully you're just wrapped up in the story and the narrative of the trailer. But yeah, so I do watch trailers, but I usually only watch them just before an album. Now, can you read the question again, Espen? There was a second part to the question, which I wanted to kind of split off.
I think what it means is, do you ever, if you finish the track, do you ever overlay it on top of a trailer to see if it fits?
Yeah, thank you. No, I never do that. No. Because, I mean, you can do that, but what I would usually do, if I was to ever do that, I would have a copy of a trailer that I would kind of score in silence. So if I was doing sort of like this epic hybrid orchestral, I might have a copy of a trailer, or at least, you know, a YouTube clip on mute that I kind of score as I'm going along to give me structure. And I did that when I started, but honestly, I don't do that anymore because I'm trying to let the kind of rough structure of a trailer cue be the guide for me. And yeah, that's it. Because the thing is, when you start to score, you kind of switch your approach to writing. Well, I certainly do. I'm thinking much more in terms of timing and how I can shape my track to that particular trailer that I'm working on, rather than how can I make this track as good as possible, regardless of what time. I mean, you could argue one way or the other. You could argue that actually scoring it would be good because it would give it a definitive structure, definitive stop and edit points. Or you could argue that actually that is changing the way the track could naturally progress. And also what I like to do, as most of you know, I like to sketch out the whole cue, usually using tremendous amounts of loops. You know, as Vic at Elephant would often tell me, okay, Rich, let's cut down on the loops on the final third because it's the same bar for a minute. But that's just become sketching. I'm sketching like it's my wash. So in answer to that point of the question, no, I rarely overlay a track on top of a trailer. Mike says, sometimes it's fun to just take your finished track and experiment with how it sounds on random trailer videos. Sometimes they sync up surprisingly well. Yeah, I mean, that is actually fun. But I also like doing that for a comedy purpose, you know, like putting Jaws on and then playing some banjo music. It's hilarious. Actually, I can't remember which, I think it might be Jaws 1, where the lady gets pulled off the pier into the water and then has to swim back. Put some fast banjo music onto that. It's hilarious. Anyway, yeah. Next question.
Yeah, this one is from Tim. He says, there are tons and tons of libraries out there, not just trailer libraries. How can you tell if they are reputable and working hard to get placements, or just collecting tracks to beef up their catalog? When I work with a new library, I always have a fear the tracks I do will end up on the proverbial shelf collecting dust. Any tips on vetting libraries and choosing which ones to pitch to?
Tim, that's actually a fantastic question. And sadly, my answer is fluffy because it's often a gut thing and it's often a relationship thing. You know, you can look at a library, see what they are doing, because most libraries brag about their placements. So you can see what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what stuff is being placed. But without an intimate knowledge of that library's placements, you can never really know what they're doing, because some libraries might not have a lot of upfront trailer placements, but they might be getting a huge amount of royalties for some random Australian TV show. So the way I would approach it is this library writing music that's in line with me? Do they do the stuff that I want to be doing? You know, you do have the thing with it, you know, you do have libraries that are absolutely humongous that cover not just trailer, but cover every single keyword under the sun, because that's their game. They're in blanket deals, basically. They are covering every base for every TV station. So it is a really tough one to call. Like how it does also depend on what you want to achieve. Do you want to be in trailers? Do you want to be in underscore stuff? Do you want to be kind of mock commercial artist? And that will narrow your field somewhat. But my best advice to you is find the libraries that aren't necessarily just doing the work that you want to do, but seem to kind of catch something in you. You know, I know I get this from websites as well. You know, you land on a website and you go, yes. In seconds, you're like, yes. And admittedly, that's why very, very important to have a good web designer. I shall remind myself of that because I need to get a good one because I'm not that great. But it's a gut thing for me. Sometimes you do have to kind of go through the motions with the library. I've written for quite a few libraries, and as you say, Tim, my music has been sat on the shelf. And over the years, that wasn't a problem because with some of those libraries, I was paid up front. So it was, an advance that I got. So the fact that it was sat on the shelf now, yeah, it's a bit irritating. But at the time, the money up front was super helpful for me, and it meant that I could have more time to write other stuff. I know I'm going on a little bit, but then what I did was I did the 80-20 analysis of my work. I said, I looked at my schedule over the year, and I looked at all the companies I'd worked with across the world in all manners of ways, whether that was corporate video, whether that was standard library, or whether that's trailer, whether it was advertising. And I thought, okay, right, what 20% of this whole is giving me 80% of my income? Oh, it's elephant music. And then I just turned around to the libraries that weren't bringing in the money for me and said, thanks, guys, see ya. So it may be a case, Tim, of you just having a go with some of those libraries that you feel right with and seeing what happens. It's painful because with library stuff, you're waiting at least 12 months before you see anything. But those upfront payments are quite nice. So suck it and see, and then do the 80-20. It worked like a charm. And as soon as I stopped working for the other stuff, I was like, oh, wow, I have like 4 days a week now to focus on the company that was bringing me loads of money. And that's when my income greatly increased, shall we say. And, Tim Ferriss always suggests doing the 80-20 analysis on everything in your life, which I do agree with. Sometimes it's a bit scary, though, because you're like, oh, but I like that stuff. Yeah. And also some of it's intangible. Like this podcast, I obviously don't get paid for this podcast that I do, but I know it brings in some amazingly loyal fans, which for me are completely priceless. So it's sometimes the 80-20 analysis is too brutal. But regarding that question, I know, like I said, it was fluff. I did warn you first, but I hope that has been helpful. And again, establish your goals. If you need money up front, find the libraries that pay up front, pay advances. If money up front isn't the issue, then you can be a little bit more selective. Great question. In fact, actually, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that, because that is a fantastic question. How do you know which libraries to work with? Often. Also, the other thing I'm going again. The other thing is that sometimes you see a library that you think is great, and then you start working with them, and you go, "Oh, actually, me and this producer that I'm working with, we don't click." So I've done work with a library that had a great reputation, but I just didn't like the way they worked with me. Not because it was bad that they did. It just didn't feel right. So I was like, see ya. Or at least they were like, see ya. Yeah. Richard Schreiber, you're going nowhere, dude. Okay, right. Let's go. Next one.
This next question is from Richard. I don't know if it's more of a question for Protege maybe, but he asks about Protege. It's a big chunk of change. Realistically, is it probable for most people to recoup their investment from placements? If so, how long ballpark would it take to recoup the investment for someone at my level?
That is the clincher, really, isn't it? And like anything, there are no guarantees. But the few placements we've had, which we've done very little pushing for the album comparatively to what we know we can. We have had a few placements for our students already, and one of them has managed to recoup a fair chunk of his money already. And yes, there are no guarantees for it. It could be that one of our students lands a 20-30 grand trailer. Job done. It could be that they land a grand trailer. It's not necessarily about recouping the costs. because there's so many wonderful things about that course. I mean, we've got a couple of, have we got a couple? Yeah, Scott did the course. We've got a couple of people who are in the community, the trailer music school community, more, I think we're about 10 or 11 of them who did the course. And none of them mentioned the money like in a negative way. For them, there were so many other wonderful aspects of it. I mean, if you're thinking about money, that we pay for the mixing and mastering, that we pay for the mixing and mastering for those albums to be released. So, I mean, there in itself is a nice little thing, but I think reframing it away from the money, because actually in the UK, a lot of music production courses are 10 grand to 20 grand. So a $5,000 to $6,000 course for a year that gives you actual industry opportunities, I think it's pretty fantastic. Obviously, I'm super excited about it because it's mine and Vic's baby. But it's just got so many wonderful things. Seeing people growing, like Scott's writing this year, Scott was great to start with anyway. But now he's just doing all these wonderful things, and the exposure to other genres that he's had has just been fantastic. It's not just hybrid, it's not just action sound design, it's just a ton of stuff. And the stuff that we're seeing, the improvement, that by the end of the year, the first submissions were releasable. So many of them were just straight, flat out approvals, because they've had 30 whole weeks of me and Vic and Guy teaching them and then feeding back each week. So they started to hear the same message over and over. And this is kind of like the playground version of Protege, what we're doing now. This kind of like feeding back on tracks, how to improve, but doing the whole year of Protege, the increase in speed and quality has been huge. It's been outstanding. And obviously there's other benefits, those who sign up to the Protege Masterclass, sort of, I say air quotes, lifetime, because lifetime guarantees are always, a bit weird, aren't they, really? Air quotes, lifetime access to the community and all the courses. You're welcome, Scott, you're welcome. It's to be able to, for me to say, yes, I can guarantee you earning your money back. I can't even guarantee anyone earning any money in music. It's, there are so many variables to that. If you produce one album a year, that's one album a year. If you produce 20 albums in a year with various libraries, your chances are greatly increased. So a lot of people don't necessarily think about these variables. Perhaps I get a one album with one massive library and I land a placement, and that's me. I'm in there and I'm going to earn tons of money. And for me, that was a big shock. I landed a first placement and I was like, this is it. They're going to roll in, week out. And then it was 18 months of nothing. Because also, as well as working for a library, the editors and people who work with your music start to know you as a composer. So it's no coincidence that my music lands on the same editor's work, because they go, oh, Rich has just done another album for Elephant. Let's have a listen and plop it in. Even though it doesn't say my name anywhere on it, except for the tagging on the tracks. But it's Elephant. But because I've built a reputation, that seems to help things along. I mean, that's just another variable in it. The nice thing for me, and I'm speaking completely honestly, the nice thing for me is offering the opportunity with like an open heart about it. I'm so passionate about helping other people and giving to other people that, we're obviously not going to give things away for free, because there is generally a value attached. So if people get things for free, they don't attach any significant value to it. Whereas when people put their own money on the line, they put more effort in. And I can see this with the trailer music founders on this call. There's a few of you here. The guys who bought my course first, who then gave me money to set up the trailer music school, their value that they put in me, I hope, has come back. because they came in, week out. They'd come into the community. They're still coming into the community. They're still coming on the calls. They're still here because they put the value on what they were putting the money on. Because, when I was selling my training music course for $5 on Udemy, you just get so many people who just didn't, like, somebody would watch the intro video when I'm terribly nervous saying, "Hi, I'm Richard. I write trailers and I've done these trailers." There's the first video I ever recorded for that course and I was literally pooing myself. Someone watches that video and goes, 1 star. And I think, 16 hours of video. Come on, give me a break. I was terrified. So there is that thing. And I'm trying to improve my mindset around money because, so much of our things with money is emotional. We all have our own stories about money and scarcity of it. There's not enough to go around, earning that much money for something fun, that's ridiculous. And all this stuff came to me when I started earning money for something that was fun and that took me like a day. There's a weird guilt. I don't know whether it's just a British thing, but, earning £20,000 for a track that took you 2 hours, there was a part of me that goes, cheating. I don't want to think that, but it's one of my little programs that's running down the back of my head all the time. And that narrative that we carry with us applies when you see a course price, doesn't it? You see that and go, it's a lot of money, isn't it? And you go, no, that's not worth it. I'm not going to do it. But this kind of relationship we have with money and also with value is for me, it's a really fascinating thing. And also working in music licensing, one day somebody could buy my track for £50 and put it on something. The next day, somebody could buy it for £50,000 and put it on something. It's like this weirdly fluid idea. The first track I got was placed for £10,000 on a British advert. But the first time it was placed for £500 on something else. The money is so weird. And I really like that because it's allowed me to address my own issues with money. And I hope maybe clear some of the weird money blocks. I mean, you've seen there's so many people who talk about this stuff, money blocks, law of attraction, I'm all over that. I love it. But if for you, the protege is all about recouping cost, it's probably not for you. If it's about growing as a composer, building communities, and hopefully creating a lifestyle that is more indicative of what you dreamed, then I think it's for you. Yes, I was reading that from a teleprompter I pre-wrote, by the way. No, I think that's it. It's a really rambling answer to your question. I can't guarantee anything with regard to placements, but we can do our best. And we have a vested interest. We don't want you to sound rubbish because this is our names on the line. We want you guys to land tons of placements because then we can say, hey, we helped them do that. So, it's not in our interest to take your money and then be like, yeah, okay, you're not very good anymore. See ya. So yeah. Do I have some questions? If it's chasing pipe dreams or a realistically possible career. Yeah, that's sorry. Just for those listening, Richard commented, was just wondering if it's chasing pipe dreams or a realistic possible career. I want to tell you a very, very short story on that. There's a book that my kids listen to. Hang on a second. It's by a British author called David Walliams, and it's called Gangster Granny. And the kid in Gangster Granny, his parents want him to be a ballroom dancer, and he wants to be a plumber. And his mum comes up to him and says, oh, when are you going to stop chasing this pipe dream of becoming a plumber and just get a solid career in ballroom dancing? I just thought it was so beautiful because flipping the normal sentence made it sound utterly ridiculous, didn't it? Like, yeah, it's just a pipe dream becoming a plumber. Like, why is that any less of a pipe dream than becoming a full-time composer? You still have to work really hard to become a plumber. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of work, but there's also a lot of work for a composer. So with regard to chasing pipe dreams, chase that pipe dream all day, please. That's how you get there. That's how you get there. Selling a few $1 million of kids songs got me into the castle. Hey, get in. Richard, we're going to high five on that. Nice. Yeah, well, you've done it. There we go. That pipe dream's well opened up. Okay, I hope that's answered your question. I hope that's helped. I'm sorry if my answers to your question is sometimes rambling. I get very excited and I find it very hard to control my monkey mind. Espen.
Yeah, I'm seeing here Richard writes, I just want to learn to write all the other styles. And I'll just jump in and say I haven't done Protege, but the Trailer Music School was like the precursor to that. And I've written styles that I had never heard of them before. And I've now gotten a placement with some swaggy rock and roll. I've gotten a horror placement, and I've gotten an uplifting piano placement. All of these things I learned at the Trailer Music School. I'd never done any of them before I started this course. Like I'd only done like the hybrid classic trailer music. So I'm guessing Protege is probably 10 times better than the Trailer Music School. So if you want to learn all the styles, I would probably go for it. Definitely. And it's so much fun. It's like I'm having so much fun writing these styles that I never thought I would ever write, So yeah.
Espen, dude, I feel almost like I'm going to cry. That was lovely. Thank you. Can I just say, Espen is the first protege, basically. It was Espen that gave us the idea, really. We had the idea anyway, but it was Espen that we were like, it works. Like we got Espen on board really quick, and we started just working with him with Elephant Music, and he's landing placements, and we were like, we should do this. And also the other thing to remember about proteges, it's our first year, and we're getting more tutors in next year. So I did 25 courses this year, like cinematic hip hop. I did tons of stuff, and we're getting specialist people in to take even more styles and genres. It's very exciting. And Guy Jones did a course this year. He's going to do more courses as well, because I don't know whether you guys know, but Guy Jones is very accomplished acoustic guitar player and singer, songwriter as well. And his courses really make mine, don't make mine look bad, but his course is great. So yeah, the other styles thing, we're so on that because we're so aware. And I've talked about this all the time on the podcast. Like trailer music is not just epic music. If you want to do beats, you can make some very good money making beats and get them placed on trailers. I mean, there's a ton. It's very exciting. So yeah, thank you for that wonderful endorsement, Espen.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like I thought it was only epic music, and then I did the course and it's like, okay, there's horror, piano, hip hop, thriller, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of it I like more than what I thought I liked. So
me too.
Should we move on to some tracks?
Yeah, let's move on. I hope that answered your questions, guys. But yeah, very exciting stuff.
All right. I think we're going to start with Chris Sanchez. It's called From Within.
Just before you start playing, Espen, can we just remind the listeners what's going on here? So each month, we put a brief together for you guys, kind of like an industry brief with a little description, some references, some external references, instrumentation, what we want from you guys, kind of what you'd get from a library, basically. And within the community, you guys produce your tracks and share them. And listeners, I love talking to the podcast listeners. It's so surreal. Listeners out there, the community that you guys are in is just so nice. I love looking through all the feeds of you guys going, "This is awesome. You're so talented. No, you're talented." I love it. It's great. So what we've got here is this is the epic hybrid. So like I said, this is basically somebody who wants to write for Marvel film trailers. So let's go.
Chris Sanchez.
What a lovely, lovely track. Thank you, Espen. Thank you, Chris. Now, so the brief for this one is sort of epic hybrid. Now, for me, this track was wrestling with itself. It was a great track. I absolutely loved the vocals. You know, I can't get enough of that stuff. Yeah, especially in the sort of Act 1, Act 2, or especially Act 1, Act 3, I should say. Felt great. The build was really nice. I really liked that as the start. Then what happened? We dropped into like this angry stepsister version of the same track that was very sound design. And I thought, oh, okay, now he's obviously dropping me into like some serious sound design Act 3. But then what happened? We went back into the emotion. So my advice, Chris, would be to take out that sound design section and let that be its own track. And let's dive into this vocal-led emotional thing. As it is, it's much more an orchestral track than a hybrid orchestral track. I mean, there is like some noises in there, but what I'd love to hear is like, I don't know what to say, but spank those strings a bit more. The strings felt really timid, especially in the final third. We want to hear those like gunning for it, to the point where, you know, when you see a string player really gunning for it because their bow is basically breaking in front of your eyes, all the horsehairs are going tweet, 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 tweet. That's what you want to think. So if you can't get that sound from your samples, run them through a compressor, run them through OTT, crush them. It doesn't matter. And then layer a synth over the top, doing the same thing. As well as those, I don't want to say spanked again, as well as those crushed strings. That's just the strings. So when we go back into that Act 3, it needed more. Vic often says, with this type of stuff, no one ever says this has got too big. No one ever says that. So don't be afraid. And I used to do that exact thing when I first started. I would craft my Act 1, I'd craft my Act 2, and I think this is the business. And then I would get so terrified of Act 3 that it would just be like almost like a wet fart version of the first. It'd be like, meh. It would just lacked oomph. And you know what? Yes, if you listen to Cody's excellent mini masterclass on the podcast about mixing, but you can just chuck a ton of stuff at it. It doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to think, oh, okay, well, I've got lots of ostinatos. I need to think of a counter line for the ostinato. No, you don't. No, you don't. No. Imagine it like, can I break this down into 4 parts? That 4-chord progression you've got, let all of the bass brass play those 4 notes. Automate them and be a bit clever with that, but just absolutely throw everything at that final third. You've got the hook with the vocal. You've got the drive with the strings. It just now needs, as I like to say, more welly. And that could be layering. When you've got that stuff, you can layer a sub underneath if you're worried about it missing the very, very low end. Just be careful to kind of notch out the below 20 on all of the instruments when you're using a sub. And then, if we're going to go into mixing with it, just then you can listen to Cody's chat about it. It's absolutely priceless. It's gold. It's basically a mixing masterclass in a 10-minute monologue. Thank you, Cody. But this stuff is hybrid and it's huge. You think about these guys, the people who want to pay for this track will want it to reflect the scale of the film that they have produced. Always think of the scale of the imagery. That's why when we go for dramatic piano stuff, we're thinking of Pride and Prejudice. Open spaces, beautiful costumes. And we reflect that with our instrumentation. So we use smaller string sections. We don't slam them with a compressor. And the same with this. We think, okay, this is galaxies colliding. So how can I make that sound huge? So Chris, fantastic track. Take out that action sound design, make it another track, because that's gold too, and then really ramp everything up. That was really long-winded. Sorry.
Let's do the next one. We're going to do Dave. He had a big feedback session on the forums. So let's give him one more.
Uh-oh.
It's Augmented Humanity version 4.
Nice. Yes, Dave. Yes. Woohoo! Okay. First of all, I love this. There were so many kind of classic trailer things going on here. With this type of stuff, with these type of trailers, they often start quite dark and impactful, where we have our trailer ping and a distant wham. No strings, just boom, boom, that type of stuff. It's fantastic. Loved it. I was so happy to hear that synth coming in. It's great. Great pattern, by the way. Patterns are one of those things that completely make a track, but I'm sure you're like me as well. You sit there umming and ahhing over whether the minor third should go there or should I put the minor sixth in there? How you arrange it. But Dave, I would like you to listen to a pair of trailer composers called Superhuman. They used to write for Pusher. I don't know whether they still do. I'm looking at Espen. I'm not sure he knows. They did a track for Maze Runner back in the day. And this really reminded me of that track. And that's an absolute compliment because Superhuman were absolutely, I don't know whether they still are, but they were absolutely slaying it. And that track was fantastic. And the only reason I know that was because I pitched on the same trailers as they did and never won because they won them all. But yeah, great. Loved the raw percussion. I would be interested to see what percussion you used for that. My one thought on it would be that we could probably, the strings felt a little shy. They felt like they sat quite far in the mix, and I know that's often to make room for the big hits and stuff. But I felt like they could really come forward. Because I think what you had was the high strings playing, do the ostinato, and then you had your low strings going dun dun dun. I wanted more, like more grit, more growth, and I think this track's brilliant, and I loved the progression, love the change. I'll get to that in a minute, but we can have those ramps into Act 2 and into Act 3 much more pronounced. Automate some volume rises. Definitely automate some opening up filters. Don't be afraid to make those rises into a drop massive, because they're the things that supply the tension for the editor. Again, similar thing. They're not going to be like, whoa, that's way too tense for my drop. They're going to be like, yes, this is massive. Awesome. Especially with this scale. And, when you listen to people like Mark Petrie or Cody or Kieran, they are within 20 seconds huge without being too huge, if that makes sense. As it sounds like there is an enormous fleet of ships coming my way. And the track is those fleet of ships firing guns gradually coming close to me and killing me. That's the wonderful visual analogy for you. Ramp up into those drops a bit more. And I feel like we could have a little bit more in the final third. There's a point where you iterate the progression and then you iterate the progression again. And then you have that cheeky little shift right at the last minute. When we reiterate the progression halfway through the final third, from the register, it sounds like the strings could go up an octave. Maybe they can't. It might be right on the cusp. It might be like C6, D6, it might be, but it feels like we need a lift in the middle of Act 3. But great stuff. And also because you're always great at writing lovely progressions, Dave. I was up until that point, I thought, oh my gosh, Dave hasn't put a progression in yet. What's going to happen? Boom. But this is the one to save the progression for, because these epic stories, the emotion is in the back end. You want the tension and the build in the first 2 acts. The emotion is in the back end. And this was great. Superb job, sir.
Yeah, really great job, Dave. Let's move on to Ignacio and his track Blood on the Field.
Oh, ominous. Wow. What was it going to continue with? Did you cut it off of it? Wow. Ignacio, is that his name? That was brutal. And actually, the wonderful thing about this track is that it really shows you why so many companies produce hit libraries. Hits, rips, swishes, whooshes. If you put those in the right place, in the right way, they do so much of the heavy lifting for your track. Yeah, fantastic. Loved it. I had this kind of like constant sort of devil angel thing going on in my mind about that level of hit being used so early in the track. I like the idea of it, and I always have liked the idea of it for the fact that it feels like I'm kind of slapping someone in the face to get their attention. So, you know, I see why you'd use the first one, you know, bam, spoosh, slap you in the face. Oh, listen to my track. But then if you keep using the same volume of the same hits throughout the entire cue, I feel like the intensity is lessened. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It sounds great, this track. I would probably like to hear it. In fact, Espen, I might ask you to play the first 30 seconds again so we can all imagine it. If we can get more of a brooding track to start, so that when we get into Act 2 and Act 3, that's not the same track, is it?
That's the wrong track.
I was like, he's done it already? Blimey.
Put it on the fly. I can say though, we all kind of gave the same feedback on this track, which was just like strip back the intro a little bit. It was awesome, but it was too much in the start. Too
much too soon. Which, if you're doing a sound design track for TV spots, it's a different story. But we're going for big feature trailers, and that you wouldn't necessarily hear those big rips so early. So let's hear that first 30 seconds again, and let's imagine it with just the brooding atmosphere. This bit. He should start it there. Thanks, man. It kind of feels like it was going to turn into a pendulum track, you know, like a really solid drum and bass cue. But yeah, imagine it if it just starts with that like in the distance, and then it's like, and then the strings come in, then we introduce the first massive one. Even then, notch off the top a little bit, so it feels like it's just a little bit further away. But yeah, it's those stings. So Mike says, seems like a lot of trailers do start off with that, though. Oh, I mean, the chat's moved. And then they go into a more quiet intro to fill some, to finally come back home to the land and start. Yeah, that's why I was saying about like sometimes the point of having that massive hit at the start to slap you around the face. Like, you're watching my trailer, but most of that is editors chopping. We'll use that sound design cue here. It does depend on the shape of the trailer, but when we're going for this type of kind of classic, releasable, epic hybrid stuff, there's generally a level of building. You know, listen to some sort of, yeah, what's that Mark Petrie track that is probably one of my favorite trailer cues of all time?
Redshift.
Thank you, Redshift. Listen to that. Like, that's what, 3.5, 4 minutes? He doesn't slam you over the head with a massive hit to start with, but that track is absolutely genius. Like, I would go back to that any time of day if I was trying to feel and grasp this type of writing. Epic hybrid. It's fantastic. You know, it starts off much like Dave's did, with this kind of like brooding, booming darkness that's then driven with an amazing ostinato, and then we get the big guns out, and then we start bringing in the choirs. P.S. I loved it in this track when the choir came in. just the right moment. Perfect. The final third, loved it. No complaints from me there at all. When we ended the track, the first ending, I mean, when it kind of goes, bwam, I was thinking, yes, 4 of the Brahms, that's all it needs, bwam. But then he brings in the choir and does this kind of step progression. I think that was a bit over the top. Not in scale, but just, I don't think I needed it. Because it felt like you gave me at least 3 endings, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes that is exactly what the track needs. And this is, again, all this feedback stuff is my opinion. You can ignore it. I am not that egotistical to think that what I'm saying is perfect, but I would have just been happy with 4 flat out Brahms. Or if you are going to do the step up, bring it in straight away. Don't hold it off for 2. Does that make sense? Yes. Yes. And P.S., you can always tell there's a good track when because obviously I'm doing this over Zoom and I can see all the faces of the community. Everyone's nodding along. Yeah. It's always a banger when the heads are moving. I think we've got time for one more track, Espen.
One more?
If we have a selected one, yes.
Yeah, sure. Let's do Mark's track. Homecoming by Mark Elba.
Yes, Mark. Now, knowing Mark as I do, I know this is probably one of his favorite ways to write. This fantastically, what's the word? Not uplifting, rousing. That's it. Rousing. It's gone more on the orchestral side of epic or of hybrid orchestral, but same thing. I just love it. When I'm listening to these tracks, my head is kind of going through, not like Jack Reacher, but I wish I was kind of cool like that, like an internal clock that's like, okay, now it needs to bring something in. Now it needs to bring something in. And every time my mind says that, something comes in or something changes. There's a lift. There's a constant lift all the way to the end. Even right at the end, I was thinking, I'm not sure I can hear any higher, but there was more high instruments coming in. And also the thing I've really loved, one of the things that always scared me about trailer music was the drums. You know, that last track where I felt like I was abused by the drums, I felt like I could never achieve that because they're so intense. So hearing a track like Mark, where it's like it's understated percussion writing, but understated percussion writing sometimes is more powerful because it leaves room for the emotion. You know, oh, I loved it, Mark. I'm not going to say anything really. I think it was pretty bang on. I would probably ask for like a tiny bit more right at the very end. I feel like we just cut off maybe 5 seconds too short, just because I feel like with a track like that, you need to give me some time to calm down after it. And when it ends suddenly, it feels like, you know, in those films when your favorite character dies and you just, you know, I don't understand why this is happening to me. Anyway, I'm going off on one. Michael summed it up beautifully when he said, "This makes me want to see the movie now." Those are the best ones, I think. Now I want to go to the theatre, even though there's no trailer for this. Absolutely spot on, Mike. The tracks that make you want to see the trailer that they are not yet placed on. So yeah, for those supervisors and producers listening to the podcast, Mark Elba, there we go. Okay, guys, what a wonderful show. Thank you so much for showing up. If you do have any more questions, fire them over to Espen. Keep supporting each other in the forums, keep giving each other feedback, keep producing this fantastic work. And it's really nice as well, especially when, again, I notice it, keep chasing that pipe dream. When I say pipe dream with air quotes, when I see the same people submitting tracks and their tracks keep getting better and better and better because they're practicing and they're working and they're getting there. And one of the reasons I decided to air this community thing for you guys on the podcast is because it's exposure for you guys. It's not just composers who listen to the podcast, by the way, people. It's not just composers. So if you do want some exposure, it's just, and you're in the community, don't forget to submit for the briefs, because also, I hope I'm a little bit helpful. I don't know. Sometimes I just get too excited and I just feel like noise comes out of my mouth. Thanks so much for turning up, guys. And thanks to the listeners for getting to this point on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely did. And I will see you next month. Espen, do we know what's happening for next month's call?
Yes, we do. Next month, we have a new brief, which is going to be dramatic piano and strings, sort of period drama. Just kind of basic, very dramatic, emotional, going for the Oscar baits.
Yeah,
the good movies.
Yeah, he did air quotes when he said good, by the way. They are good, Espen. Yeah, not being arrogant, but the tracks that Espen chose for the brief are mostly all mine. So no, I'm not joking.
Not even on purpose.
No, not even on purpose. I said, Espen, put mine in. This is so nice because it's a real gear shift. We've gone from sort of huge epic orchestral to, you know, the piano stuff, which for me has been a huge part of my career. And that's why one of the courses in the training music school is the piano training music course. Actually, I think it's called something else, actually. Did I change the name of it? I probably did. I changed the name so many times.
I think you did, yeah.
Yeah.
Heartwarming piano, is that it?
No, that's no.
Cinematic.
Period drama piano course, because that's what you're going for. Thank you. I saw Wenda. Thumbs up. Thanks, Wenda. Yeah, period drama, because this is what you're going for. And you know, I was talking when I was feeding back in one of the last tracks about scale and understanding the visuals of what you're doing. Period drama, it's intimate. It's very popular now to use solo strings and a piano. In fact, Vic just told me when I saw him the other day that we just landed a cue, which was just solo strings, which we intended for period drama stuff. So think small with regard to instruments, think big in terms of emotion, and let patterns rule the track. Very cryptic, I know. Thanks, guys. You are absolute legends, and thank you to everyone listening, and I will see you next month.